Welcome to Baseball Biz on Deck. I am Mark Corbett, and once again, I am here with Mr. Matt Germain. How you doing, Mr. Matt?
I'm just an all-star. That's basically where I sit right now, right? The all-star break is upon us, and all of us are supposed to be breaking, into a lull of the summer. But I think everybody's enjoying this breath of, breathe in, breathe out, see where we stand, and move on from there.
Well, I've enjoyed the heck out of it, what I did see of it. I mean, the to see Junior Caminero do so well at the All-Star Home Run Derby. My gosh. He went there, he said he was going to go and have fun. Not that he wouldn't try to win this, but it wasn't like the aspiration. I think the experience is what he was looking for. But man, he did pretty daggone good. I mean, was it Cal Riley who actually won it? I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. Basically the way I put it on Blue Sky was Junior Caminero has 6 years to hit home runs like Cal Raleigh, right? He's got 6 years to catch up to that. So when you're looking at it from that point of view, like that's just a really impressive show by Junior Caminero.
Then it's great to see him there. Like you said, the future is bright for him. I couldn't help but watch Pete Alonso being a Tampa guy. He's went to Plant High here, and I hated that he was playing for the national team, well, putting three up on the board. Basically, he was hit that home run and brought three RBI, I think. Yeah, two brought in. I think two other people out on base. So he put three of the six runs up, you could say, for the national team. And I was looking. He has been of the last 7 years that he's been in MLB. Well, 5 of those years he's been an all-star.
Mhm.
The first year he was rookie of the year. Then there's 2 years he wasn't selected, and then the four since then he's been selected as an all-star. And he proved a reason to be there. I'll say that much for him.
Surprisingly, the game was actually okay. Like I thought I really enjoyed the pace of it and the little peaks here and there of the talents that are on the field. Nobody pushed pedal to the metal by any means, but I just mean like it actually was a decent baseball game. It wasn't a blowout. It wasn't a 17 to 14 game. Like it was what, 7-6, I think was the final score. So the guys actually put on a good show. Like if people went there to that game, they felt like they got their money's worth with what they paid, and they got to see a lot of cool moments. There was the one where they had Clayton Kershaw actually talking to the guys in the broadcast booth as he's pitching, and Spoltz is saying, "Throw him the splitter." He goes, "I don't throw a splitter."
And that's the insanity that makes the game fun. But like you said, it was still competitive. I mean, the score is 6-6 at the end of the ninth, and they go into a swing off to actually see who's going to win the game. And so that's the part that makes it silly and fun. But one thing, well, Kershaw, yeah, I love the back and forth with them out there. When they try to do the mic up of the players, Matt, during the regular season, sometimes it just eats right through me because I figure the player's concentration is paramount to what's happening in the game. But during this game, sure, go ahead, mic them all up.
I think there should be a rule where it's miking up the people that are in the dugout, right? But without putting them in danger as well because they're not paying attention or
Yeah.
anything. But but I think it should be limited to that. On the field, I mean, if you want to give it to the first base coach or the third base coach, which I think would be interesting as well, but you're right. Like there's a lot of things that can happen on the field pretty quickly. And just that one misstep or that one lag can mean a lot to that player or that play. So the thing is with baseball, though, it's 162 games. A lot of people don't mind the little misses and everything else. That's why they tolerated umpires all this time, right?
Well, isn't that the truth? Well, and oh
I took a swipe. I'm sorry. I apologize.
no, 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 no. It's it's been nice though to watch this game and to see three of the Rays actually participating in it. Seeing Drew, and I know they didn't put up any runs while he was up there. I don't necessarily know if he struck anybody out, but I think that there was no runs, no walks on him.
Right.
And see Aranda, I think he had a hit. I'm not sure he had a run, and I believe Caminero did as
But just,
well.
just think that I want to go back to Drew. So here's a guy that's had how many surgeries? Three? Right?
Yes.
Think about what that means to him. Like, yes, he has a small, upgraded deal with the Rays that'll see him get paid, a few $1 million. So at least if he does have another incident and it does end his career as a pitcher, then at least he'll have that money to back him up. But this experience to go from, all the troubles and tribulations that he's had all the way through to finally get that kind of recognition to be in an all-star game. Like I just love to see that. And I'm really happy for Drew. I know he works his tail off regardless of what injuries come up. So, you know, kudos to him and I'm really happy. And the same thing goes for Aranda. You're right. Like Aranda is nice to, I've watched him very closely all the way up through, and I always thought he was an underrated prospect as he was coming up. And so to see him finally, like a lot of teams after last year could have given up on Aranda and not given him the opportunity to actually, do what he can do, especially when you have the depth of first baseman that the Rays had. They could have just used Yandy and, used Brendan Lau at DH and not really used Aranda to maximize his bat. But instead, they gave him that opportunity and he gets to run with it and ends up in the All-Star game. So as much as we gripe about who's in the All-Star game and who isn't, I'm really happy to see those two in the All-Star game, especially.
It was great to see a lot of the young folks out there as well. One thing we got to see in the All-Star game that you probably could have seen in spring training, but you won't see the rest of this season, and that was Tarik Skubal pitching to Manny Machado and tap tap on the top of that cap. And what is that? Oh, that's right. That's the ABS system. First time ever Major League Baseball season that's been put into play. Pardon me. And that was just, I think people were ready to fall over laughing just because it was so unique and new to see it happen. And that first challenge, if you will, was actually, whoops, guess what? The ump didn't get this one right.
Well, the scary part that I think people are understating in a lot of ways is that it's so successful in AAA that the players get it right so much of the time that it's almost like, okay, well, if the AAA folk are getting it right that often, major league players, some like the best in the game, are going to be calling it out. Now, it'll be really interesting to see, their success rates over time. So we get the first year, the second year, the third year, but eventually you're going to see some sort of trend. And you know, are they going to start rating players on how well they can get those calls right?
Well, I could see that. I mean, who knows? It wound up being a daggone analytic before it's all said and done. And think about this, though, is you have what, two challenges in a game. And I guess if you lose it, if you're wrong. It's the same thing here, I guess. You get two of those in the game as far as being able to challenge the ABS. So you can't just continue on and on and on and question it. Can you imagine if they did have it like that? You could challenge everything and you would, my gosh, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it measures up any kind of assessment on umpires too from the ABS system. I'd like to find out a little bit more about how that's working in AAA as far as what they're doing with that information above and beyond actually on the field.
It'll be interesting to see the team strategies because you're almost forced to outlaw anybody using it on the first pitch, second pitch, even third pitch of an at bat. Like unless you're up two strikes and the third one's happens to be a strike, then really like you're just doing it for once you have like a 2-2 count, a 3-2 count, those kinds of things, and you get that, one pitch that is really going astray. That's when usually I think you'll make that call. So it'll be interesting to see, players that use it at the wrong time, they're gonna get raked over the coals by people, and so it's going to become a talking topic that we haven't had to deal with before in the past. So it'll be a pretty interesting scenario of. Do you think it's the last major change when it comes to the on-field stuff that we're crossing over at the last taboo, basically, where all the unspoken rules of this, that, the other thing, right? And we've broken most of them to this point. We've even made the bases bigger for crying out loud to make
Yeah.
bases easier. So, is this the last one?
I have to believe it will be for some time. I mean, unless there's only thing I could see, maybe some sort of safety issue. I mean, I keep thinking of Hunter Biggie the other day in the dugout. Well, it's been a few weeks now, and it's not really a rule, but what other changes might be made? Um, would we do anything with the depth of the field, looking for any uniformity? No. I think with what you got there, probably it's going to be the last one for a long time. I
I
think you're
think so.
right.
I think the only other one I could see is like this whole torpedo bat issue. Depending on how crazy it gets, how much they push the limits, yada yada yada. I could see something happening with that. But yeah, I think this is the last major issue that they'll tackle. I am curious to find out, like, if the Baltimore Orioles keep messing around with their fences the way that they are, like it basically turned it into Lego, and they
Yeah.
keep doing and redoing it. Like, there's got to be some sort of rule where if you change the fence, it's a 10-year period, right? You keep it for 10 years. You want to change it up to 10 years, that's fine, but at least then we have some form of measured approach to it instead of yearly. Hmm.
Yeah, you bring up the changes like Lego, and I suddenly had this image of like Donkey Kong trying to see, moving one level down to the next level and everything else, and is that what they're going to? That's what they need to do. They need to have an AI system set up that can actually contract or push back out during the game at different points, and we need to tie it in with a fan contest that a fan gets to select for the day what the measurements of the field be, and they can be pushed in and out. I don't know. Heresy.
Here's an idea. So we get into extra innings, the fences come down 5 feet, and then they come in 10 feet just to make it easier for people to hit home runs, right?
That has a solid chance, man. I like that one. I
There you
like
go.
that.
We're changing the game one rule at a time.
Well, do you want to talk draft or you want to talk Rays?
We could do either or. I do think that there's good things to talk about in both. Let's do the Rays first, just to
Okay.
get that one out of the way.
Yeah, wow. I mean, we're looking at I read the article in the Athletic on Monday. I saw
Mhm.
Craig Calcaterra had said something about it as well. And I see that they are naming that there's not an unnamed source that says this deal is going down. This $1.7 billion deal is going to go down with Stu and the gentleman from Jacksonville. And I'm saying, okay, yeah. I'm hearing the soap opera
We've
music
heard
in the
that.
background start rolling. It's like, geez, and then people start coming up to me the next day or so and say, hey, Mark, what's really, don't talk, me, don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. It's not done. Yeah. You see this happen in the media all the time. So one place cited an unnamed source, and suddenly everybody's picking it up and saying, hey, guess what's happening? And as it was said in the Athletic, but the Athletic has said just an unnamed source. And I just get wait till you got some real meat. But in the meantime, they got Ken Hagan, the councilman from in Tampa, and he's talking about it. Of course, he was talking about it 3 weeks ago too, when we thought he had it all worked out. And he's even saying that I think Darryl Shaw, the developer, is reconsidering about having that women's stadium down here for the soccer, and maybe that would be the place for the Rays. Sheesh! I'm dizzy, brother. I'm absolutely dizzy.
So there's a couple of considerations. Like, you're right. I will not believe it until it actually happens. And my question would be, why is it taking so long? Like, it doesn't take this long to have lawyers draw things up, right? I get that the trop lease may put certain wrinkles, like especially with the renovations and the storm and where they're going to play. Do they continue? Maybe there's a negotiation time with St. Pete to get out of that lease 100% and just say stop for the renovations. We don't want it. Like, whatever is needs to happen on that front, that could be the reason for the delay, right? And to that point, I give it a lot of credit because it can't be easy sitting in that room with that, the St. Pete hierarchy that did all they could do to bend
Yeah.
over backwards for everyone, and then end up, on the salty side of it. But the other side of that I kept thinking is okay. So are they also negotiating how everything is going to play out with Al Lang, the redevelopment of the area, what's going to go in instead? Because if Stu Sternberg has $1.7 billion to spend and the Rowdies, there's an opportunity there for them to build a stadium that is state of the art, with part of that funding, whether it be in central St. Pete or elsewhere. So let's play this out. So let's say the Rays move to Tampa, which it seems likely, like you said, because of a lot of different ingredients. Then the Yankees need to be bought out of their affiliate, right?
Right.
So if you give them Al Lang and then the Rowdies move to central St. Pete and build a stadium there for the Rowdies, everybody's covered. And the Rays just have to use the Steinbrenner Field as a plus facility. Parts to that, Mark. So
Say
yeah,
that again, please.
there's a lot of parts to that. Like it's a lot of hearsay, a lot of possibilities, but it's one scenario that would point to why it's such a long, convoluted process.
Well, here's a question to put on top of that. The complexity of that also is that it's not just an owner wanting to buy the team and he gets to do what he wants to do with it. There are obligations, like you're pointing out with St. Pete and the Trop. And then, even if everybody gets on board and has a working relationship there, then you still have, well, I can't remember, it's like 25 or 28 of the teams have to agree upon this change. So that's another thing right there. So there's a dependency there. And I liked what you brought into the whole equation I saw you put on earlier today about still giving the Rays a presence in St. Pete, with the spring training.
Right.
But there are still a lot of moving parts, even if everybody says, yes, we're done, it's not going to happen immediately. So I see them still. I don't know if they'll be at, I don't know if they're going to be at Steinbrenner Field for a while or if they're actually going to try to use the Trop, during the interim. But what will it take to get Steinbrenner Stadium as far as a location? Are we just going to have to rent it each year for the next 2 or 3 years until we get something built again?
So there is like an article on D Rays Bay that points out why I think it's called Rule 52, the proximity rule, which means that historically what has happened in Miami, it was the same thing, and a couple of other locations where they essentially bought out whatever affiliate was there. So they paid the price that was determined by a formula that they use, which would be substantial, but it would be more than worth it. And I know some people came back and said, "Oh, it might not be worth it, blah blah." What does it mean if it's just 10 miles away? Ask the Tampa fans that aren't going to see the Rays. That's the significance. Yes, it would be a generational change to the population of Tampa to be able to get access to the Rays and not have the option to go to the Yankees affiliate. It is an actual mental shift in that population that will grow up now with kids and kids and their kids and their kids, all the way up to finally build some sort of long-term pride in the franchise in Tampa, which is what needs to happen. And it's okay that spring training takes place in Florida. We all know that it's going to build some sort of oddity when it comes to fandom in that state. It really does. And I get it, because if you're near that, that's what you grew up with, and then you're just going to gravitate to it, right? There's a very intimate relationship that those fans have with players when they get to see them at spring training and they get to, break bread with them in a way that in other sports I don't think really happens. It's the uniqueness of baseball, right? It's the one opportunity that they get to do that. So that's why it's so important, because if you're a kid in Tampa and you're rubbing shoulders in spring training with all those Yankee players, well, guess what? You're going to become a fan of the Yankees, regardless of whether or not the Rays are actually from Tampa.
Oh yeah.
So it needs to happen, Mark. It needs to happen where the Rays end up in Tampa, the Yankees move that affiliate somewhere. Now I'm saying St. Pete and or like whether in Central St. Pete or in Al Lang, I think those are two options that will not hurt the Rays in the same way that having them still at Steinbrenner Field would.
Yeah, there's just got to move around some of these chess pieces, and I do like the idea. Pardon me. I do realize I should say the idea of the location and having to move because of agreements with you can be within what is the distance?
I think it's 15 miles.
15 miles. Yeah, yeah. That I can't imagine that the MLB couldn't make this happen. There's too much value here. There's too much possibility, and I cannot see Stu not moving forward with this. And certainly the new ownership will want to move forward with it, but we'll see what comes from that.
So
Hmm.
here's the other complication with it right now is the trade deadline is less than 2 weeks away. Who pays the bill for anybody that's brought aboard, right?
Ooh.
Who decides what bill is tolerable and isn't? Can Stu just go on a spending spree now?
Oh my gosh. No, I'm sure he won't do anything like that. It's it would go against him, especially I hear he wants to own keep some maybe some percentage of the raise, uh, some sentimental piece like a FIFO medal or something like that. I don't know, but
Depends on whether or not he wants to jump in on any of the expansions once they get announced.
yeah,
And also, I think the other delay between now and September that could be happening as well is dealing with the whole Wander Franco contract, which
jeez,
is another complication, right? So there's a lot of checks and balances that have to be put in place to account for things. But to be honest, Mark, like if the reports are true and he's getting $1.7 billion, like everybody needs to tip their cap to him for having done the whole song and dance between, what is it, 2004 to now? What is that, a 20-year period for 1.7 billion? That's a lot of wily business savvy.
oh, there's no doubt about that. If nothing else, we know that Stu gets out the measuring stick and figures it out as best he can. You wouldn't be from where he was to what he looks like he's going to get if he wasn't a savvy businessman.
Mm.
And it bothers me. I see some people saying things like, "Well, we'll get an owner here who actually cares about the community." The Rays do a lot of things for the community. Okay, now. Do you think they should do more? Maybe, who knows? But I've always felt like they've been involved in the community. They've done things, whether it's with charities, whether it's drives, whether it's different activities. And so whatever else you want to say about Stu Sternberg, I think you have to give a tip of the hat for that too.
He's brought like pride in so many ways. The Rays are the model franchise in Major League Baseball, literally, in terms of building a winner,
Hmm.
right? And literally. So just that in itself, forget everything else, forget all the noise, all the budgets, everything else. Everybody wishes they could operate as well as the Rays when it comes to gathering talent in whatever way, shape, or form that is. Nobody else has hired front offices as consistently as Stu Sternberg that are as successful as the Rays. Nobody.
Yep.
Like it's just a fact. Like his hires get poached over and over and over again, and
Yep.
they get used in some of the most prominent franchises in Major League Baseball. He is a genius at building a front office. That is where he's made, I think, the biggest impact in baseball. And he's responsible for having changed, I don't know, a half dozen rules. Like, when you're pushing the limits of that front, I'm sorry, but that means that you're enabling your franchise to operate at the maximum capacity. Pittsburgh fans would drop everything to have Stu Sternberg as their owner. they would roll out the red carpet for Bob and kick him down that red carpet all the way down to the curb and say, Stu, please take over our franchise. We'll sign a contract with you for 50 years as long as you do what you did in Tampa. Like, so I will say the Rays fans have been spoiled by Stu. I have no idea what this new ownership is going to bring. But I'm a huge fan of how he operated the team itself. How he did the public affairs aspects is a completely different thing. But like you said, in terms of a social aspect, he treated everybody with respect, except for the fans themselves by threatening to tear away half of their franchise, right? And put it in Montreal or do this. Like, yes, I get that. But I mean, in terms of community, in terms of, whether you're Greek, Canadian, LGBTQ, Cuban, Spanish, it doesn't matter. You're respected by the Rays and you're welcome with the Rays. And to me, that's definitely worth more overall than what a lot of franchises are showing.
Yeah, yeah. But it is kind of funny when you look at it though, and you talk about the depth of what he gives there, and that, but when it actually goes directly to the fans, as far as giving us some love, man, it's never been quite as well as the other. But
And he brought the grit
oh,
and glow. He brought the grit and glow. How do you like that's the best, third what is it called? City Connect
yep,
jerseys. Like
yep.
he brought that. He brought youth into the Rays by being able to be open to a concept that a lot of people would have turned their noses to. Like imagine the Yankees going that far, right? They never would. The Mets, even Steve Cohen would have turned his nose to that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good from it, and I think when you look at the record itself, since he's been on board to now being one of the top five franchises in wins, um, it, I think if you asked him, he probably would say he wishes he could have pushed in a little bit harder to get that World Series win,
Yeah.
just to get that one or two different ingredients that would have pushed him over the edge. But regardless, it's still like the Cubs went what since 1908 to 2000 whatever before they won one. So there's there's been longer stretches, I guess.
I know occasionally down at the Tampa Baseball Museum, we've got a wall over there when with Joe Madden was talking, 9 Eagles, 8 9 men would finish up to the eighth postseason and get the World Series. And so I said, well, and then he left us and got a World Series somewhere else. I said, man, be happy for the ride. Be happy for the ride. I said, yeah, I'd love to see that happen. But it's exciting times. I mean, and the whole Longoria story about getting to the postseason. There's so many great stories that have come in. And a lot of this, like I said, once Stu came in, things did change. Still, they weren't spending any of the money in the first place. I think that's why some of the managers who came in before Madden weren't able to do much. Not that a wallet was open, wide open, but there was a different mindset. And I think there was somewhat more being spent than in the past. So, anyway, do I think he's going to go out and do all kinds of crazy trading and all of that and spending money everywhere before the new guy gets here? Probably not.
Yeah, he better sign those draft picks though, Mark.
So let's talk about those, dude. What can you tell me? What's some of the great stuff you've seen with the draft?
So one of the first things I'll say is that the Rays were actually credited with having one of the top three drafts, in the game by MLB Pipeline, by Jim Callis, even Baseball America threw a lot of praise at them. And a lot of it has to do with, and we've talked about this before, where they have a model that they use for the draft since 2021. They go very heavy with hitters at the top, then they do a whole swath of pitching. So when you're looking at their first seven picks, six of them were hitters, including the top five. So you've got two shortstops, a outfielder, or two outfielders, a catcher that will probably end up at first base or in left field. Um, that's what the cards are saying. And then they also have another outfielder that's expected to be a right fielder. So if you're looking at it, and then I did this where I built the team using just the draft picks from this year. Their top pick was a shortstop. Their second pick was a center fielder. So you're talking about a team that loves to shore up the middle of the field, right? The third pick was a guy that could probably shift to second or third. So still, again, you're probably up the center of the field. Then you've got a left fielder, you've got a catcher. So now you've built the whole
Wow.
center of the field. And you've got a right fielder with a heck of a gun on him. So what does that do for the Rays pitching when they grow up with all this team? All of them are stellar defenders. So all of those pitchers that you get afterwards are going to benefit from constant, steady, above average defense. And they're
Right.
all going to grow together, used to winning, because defense and pitching wins in baseball at any level. So it's a genius concept. But if you look at it from 2021, 2022, 2023, 20, it is the same exact model, Mark. Every single year they use this model to a differing degree. That they might select a pitcher a little bit earlier, but weighted wise, it is exactly the same mindset. And it's amazing to see. And I think at some point in time, somebody else is going to try to copy it because I think like this second half of this year and onwards, you're going to start seeing the fruits of that labor. And because that 2021 class is arriving. And so you're going to see Bob Seymour, you're going to see Carson Williams, you're going to see all of the guys that, carried those pitchers up the ranks. And I did a count of, how they had 20 picks or 21 picks in 2021. 13 of them are still active. Uh, 12 of those 13 are still with the Rays. The only one that's not is Drew Baker, that's with the White Sox. And so, you're talking about what is that? I'm doing quick math. So 60% of the draft picks in that class are either in AAA, double A, and then there's one that is Kyle Manzardo, who's in MLB. Mason Montgomery is in AAA, but he's on a 40-man roster.
Right.
So long story short, they, they were able to have two guys already in MLB, one guy that's a top 20 prospect, another two that are expected to have major league roles for a long period of time. So you're talking 5 out of 20. That is a really good percentage, right? For
Yeah.
for most teams, that's a good draft. Now, what is the question is what are their ceilings going to be? So how much of a star or how much of a, career will they have? So we'll see. It's going to be fun to watch, but the Rays definitely, I think, had a really good draft. Like I said, it's just about signing those players now.
Yeah, well, some of them wind up going to college or they do something else and wait to see what happens next year. I'm excited. I mean, I've seen some of these younger gentlemen. It's going to be exciting future for the Rays. And my mind goes back to something you said earlier about how other teams learn to poach the front office of the Rays. So you're talking about this whole strategy of how to select in the draft. I guess we might see more of that too, slowly from the other teams. It might make it more competitive for them to be able to achieve what they want to because of that.
Well, because if you think of baseball, it's much, the risk is much higher to develop a pitcher than it is to develop a position player, right? And if you're able to solidify your position players to the point where they're cheap, they don't
Yeah.
get injured much, right? So Carson Williams is going to be controllable by the Rays for 6 years as their main shortstop. How much money are they saving as compared to a Francisco Lindor that they would have had to pay, right? As an example. So now you free up that money to be able to focus that money on pitching, short-term pitching, right? You're not going to go out and pay it a significant amount of money. So they signed Zach Littell to an extension. They signed Shane McClanahan to an extension. They signed Drew Rasmussen to an extension, all small amounts and short term to minimize risk. So you're able to focus your money, especially if you're a franchise like Tampa, in those areas. And then if you do have extra money, because you do have so many cheap players, you go out and spend a little bit more on a Danny Jansen or a Ha-Seong Kim because you can free up the rest with all the other guys that you have coming through that are so cheap from the draft. So it's a genius concept, and I really like the way they're doing it. And what I especially like about this draft is they're very left-handed heavy when it comes to hitters. So the guy that they got that's the best power hitter in the maybe in the draft, is a switch hitter on top of it.
Mhm.
And he's 6'5". He's a beast. I think that he's going to be somebody that's going to he might have the highest ceiling of the entire group when it comes to impact that he could have at the plate. So Tatum Gray is his name, and he's the guy they got in the third round. He's a high school guy, so again, there's a lot of time for him to grow into whatever he's going to be. But if the Rays fans are looking for who's going to arrive to the Rays first, that's definitely Brendan Summerhill, who's their CBA pick. He's an outfielder that I think he has all the tools to be like an all-around player. Like there's no weakness to his game essentially. So he would be able to start maybe an A plus if they wanted to. They sign him early enough, and then he would be able to arrive at MLB pretty quick. Like you're talking, no, maybe 2027.
Wow. Wow.
So so that helps, right? Like, and he's comparable to somebody if the Rays want to like know the Rays system. Aiden Smith is that kind of player, and he's the guy that they got from Ferrandia Rosarena from Seattle. And so when you're talking about five tools or four tools, if the hitting doesn't show up as you expect, they're if you can play all three outfield positions and especially center field at a plus level, then the Rays will love you and they'll definitely invest heavily in your future.
Man, oh man, the future. That's what we're looking at with the Rays, whether we're talking about the draft, whether we're talking about the new ownership and the new location we're going to be. There's just so much. I mean, yeah, I had that one image I put together of on a promotion with you, had a crystal ball in front of you, looking murky because as much as you can define through it, there is still this cloud, this mist of fog trying to come through. But Matt, you seem to have a fan that blows its way all through that. So keep sharing it, brother. Keep sharing it.
Sounds good to me. I'd like to get an upgrade, but definitely not easy. But you do enjoy seeing the ones that break through and the path is so long for baseball players. Like from the time they get drafted and they're
Yeah.
all excited to like I still have a vivid memory of watching Josh Lowe get drafted as a third baseman, quote unquote. And he looked so young and looked so fresh and like he's at the Trop, he's getting his picture taken, it's a whole uh, lifetime ago now, it seems
Yeah.
like because of all the things that have happened since. But you're like, I remember the whole path all the way up. Is he going to be this? Is he going to be that? And whatever everybody was saying. And then he gets to AAA. Everybody's down on him because he can't hit and all the struggles that went through to the point where like you're like, no, the talent is there. He's going to figure it out. Don't worry. It's coming through. And then boom, it happens. You're like, see, I told you.
It's great to see that evolution, man. That's what another thing that keeps this game interesting.
It is. Yeah.
Man, I know, Dixon, we talked so much about the Rays and the All-Star game and the draft, the ownership. There's something I'm working on right now is there's folks, it's called Women in Baseball Week, and they do it each year. And the whole idea is to spotlight different things going on with women in the game during that week. It doesn't have to be happening then, but spotlighting it, trying to get a focus. And a gentleman by the name of Ryan Woodward, who's been on the show before, is heading that up. I'm going to have him on the show here probably later this week. So keep your eyes out for that. There'll be also, we have a show that went up just the other day, and that is with Coretta Langhenry. And that is where she's put together an organization called Level Up and doing some things with women there. The last thing I want to say is a bit of sadness, a loss. There's a friend, a lady by the name of Zipay, who was one of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League players. She was with the Rockford Peaches. And while she was with the AAGPPL, she also developed an all-girls baseball and an all-women's baseball tournament. And that's been going on for about 3 years. The first couple of years in Sarasota, and I guess it headed to Durham last year and this upcoming. But coming back to Sue, she was passed away 91 years of age. Spitfire, man, just a spark plug, and she made things happen. I mean, I got to work with a little bit with her on that second year of the tournament, and she had an eye to make sure things were going on. And if somebody wasn't, she was sure to make sure to get them in a place where they needed to. But she is also a motivation for me, and I think a lot of others, for women in baseball to make things happen. We can't stand still because of that. And if anything, her she motivated us. She has motivated us in life, and she certainly has in her passing as well. So I did want to bring those up before we closed out the show today, Matt. And again, Sue was just a stellar individual, man.
So, have you ever heard of Caballo Blanco? And I don't want to, it won't take very long.
Oh,
Um,
what is that?
he's an ultra runner who went down to Mexico at some point and ended up following this tribe that was, I say tribe, these people that were living, far away from everybody else in this canyon, and they had a really hard time basically, but they were all super fit. Like they could run like the wind. They could they're even with bare essential sandals on their feet, and that's how they ran, was like very thin, and they could run like crazy. So he started running in that area. For whatever reason, he gravitated to it, and he started this ultra marathon where uh, if the locals ran it, they would basically, and they finished, they got a certain amount of money or funding for food and whatnot. And all this stuff, became a possibility for them, and they were, poor. So they gravitated to it. And even like of all people of all uh, shapes and sizes from their communities came out and did it. And so a lot of ultra runners, including some of the best ones from the US, ended up going down there. And you'll find this story in Born to Run, which is a book that you can read that has ultra runners in there. So what he did basically was start this thing where Scott Jurek and a whole bunch of other people went down there and tried to run against them. And they ended up getting beat by some of the people that were local. And so, it just showed, and a lot of the things that they did was like their observe their diet, how much activity do they do every day. Yeah, they had very, different lifestyles, completely cut off from most of society. So, his that marathon only grew after he passed. That's why I bring it up, because it became sort of a bigger calling for people to go and support the cause, basically. And so now it's an even bigger thing. And a lot of people go down there just to see what it's all about, because they've read about it, they've seen it, ended up in a book. And even though he ended up passing, that community still benefits a lot from it and is able to actually grow on to and build on his legacy. So hopefully that's what happens here, is that, that tournament that she started and all the movement that goes along with it grows based on the legacy of her and all her efforts.
Wow, that's a great way to go ahead and, like I said, establishing her legacy in setting the groundwork and actually the motivation for the rest of us to move forward. So that's a great story to kind of illustrate that. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it, brother.
No problem.
All righty, everybody. I want to thank you again for joining us here today on Baseball Biz on Deck. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Matt, anything else we need to share with our boys and girls?
No, just that at the end of the month, there's a 4 game series against the Yankees, and I hope the Rays sweep them.
I'm with you. Let's do it. Let's do it in George Steinbrenner Field. Okay. Raise up.
And just a reminder, if you enjoyed this show, go ahead, like and subscribe to Baseball Biz on Deck. Also, you can find Matt at matgermain.b Sky Social. That's Matt at matgermain.b Sky Social, or Mark at baseballbizondeck@gmail.com. You may also find Baseball Biz on Deck at iHeart Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and at baseballbizondeck.com. Special thanks to Scott Holmes for the music, stomps, and claps.